that I would say the first 6 months going into that summer, we killed off a decent amount of teachers we had inherited. Well, I mean,
Not
not literally
literally.
killed off, but I mean,
So your first year of marriage, the first big decision you make together is let's open up a music school.
Yeah. Honestly, like choosing the pink color. You know?
Yeah.
working at Onstage was so horrible for him that he couldn't take it.
Chris and Hannah, so good to have you on the broadcast. Longtime friends. You guys have such a cool story. I've known you for, I don't know, what's it been, about 5 or 6 years now, and following your journey as music school owners. So thank you for being on the show today and being willing to share your story and talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, yeah. So you guys own Onstage School of Music in Charlotte, North Carolina, but you have multiple locations across the kind of the surrounding area there. Um, but you guys really got started as professional performers. Um, Chris, you got Bachelor of Music from the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music and a Master of Music from Indiana University. Hannah, you got a performance of diploma from Juilliard, and your instrument is the harp.
Mhm.
Chris, your instrument is the French horn. Um,
Mhm.
so you guys have like all this, or had all this performing experience, and then you decided to start a music school, which makes sense, right? Like your background is music. But I'm so curious to hear as we talk, like how you kind of had to make that transition just mentally, like going from being a performer and I talked to teachers for many years where they get into this mindset of like, they have all this knowledge, they have all this high knowledge, right, of music education, and then they go to teach a 6-year-old Susie, and it's like, what's that on the wall, and so it's like you're having to like learn how to really bring it down to their level. And but your guys' school is like all your multiple locations. You guys have hundreds and hundreds of students. How many students do you have now?
Not. I was waiting for her to respond, but she's not going to. So I think we're about 930.
So nearly 1,000 students between all your locations. It's amazing. Really, really amazing. I'd like, I guess the first question that I have for you is like, you've gone from studying at places like Cincinnati and Indiana and Juilliard, playing in orchestras, but now you're running a music school, not just any music school, but like one of the largest music schools in your area. It just even in the whole region there. Did that feel like a straight line, or did it take a lot of unexpected turns?
I guess unexpected turns, but I guess I honestly, it just kept compounding.
Hmm.
You just learn one thing and then you master that and you learn the next thing, just very much in the way that we learned to play the harp and the horn.
Mhm.
And there's times where some things really kick your butt and you gotta figure you really have to get over this hump, and there's all these problems you gotta learn. There's tons of trouble, and some things were easier for us than others. And it's kind of like that. I think that's kind of the way it went. Definitely not a straight line, but it wasn't too bumpy. I gotta say, we're pretty blessed in that way. It is funny to go back and think about it. We certainly have a lot of stories along the way, different things and places, times that we made bad decisions, and those are all the ones you learn from the most.
Yeah, of course, right? Because they stick in your memory, and it's like those are the things that oftentimes are the most, like, the biggest challenges that you have to kind of overcome. So, like, okay, so you guys you're performing on major stages around the world, and you're playing, the Beethovens and the, all that, and then when did the idea come across, like, oh,
Well,
let's open up a music school?
Yes.
you want to do it?
So right after college, I decided that I wanted to, of course, we were doing the orchestra thing, the performing thing. It's hard um, as any musician, to be in orchestras and that sort of thing. I think it's a little bit extra challenge for a harpist, as there's only one in an orchestra, and we don't even play on every
Yeah.
concert. um, so we were thinking, we were just married, and we were thinking like, what are we going to do? How are we going to have an income? How is that sort of thing going to happen? Chris had already been teaching in his home for years, and for different things previously. But then, right after college, I we basically decided to, maybe me more than Chris, but we basically applied for all the music schools to go work.
Mhm.
Oh,
So we were working at all sorts of different music schools in the Charlotte area, and had pretty much 6 days of teaching for both of us that we were doing every week. Had a church job on Sundays, so it kept us
wow.
busy. And so one of the places that I work for, on stage, I got an email actually right before we were about to leave to go to our church job on Sunday, and she was like, "Hey, I'm looking to move away from the business, and I think she had been thinking about it health wise, and just not wanting the responsibility of the rent and everything, and so she offered it to us, and
Wow.
that began our began our story of Onstage.
Mhm.
So was it called On Stage at the time?
It was it was Onstage School Performing Arts. Um, she had previously run it as a music. It was mainly herself and just a couple of her friends, I would say, and teachers that she'd hired. But her big focus, she was a voice teacher, and she also taught at colleges as well. So that was a big focus of hers. And so we kind of came in and changed that to just music lessons.
Did she how big was the school at the time?
Well, it was we. I remember doing the numbers on it, which we had hardly earned any money, as a performing musician and teaching on the side. You
Yeah,
generally
it's
just
tough.
barely scrape by, and
Yep.
that's about it. And I basically resolved myself to that life essentially, and just figured I'd build it. That's what I thought I would do. But yeah, once we got offered this, it took a lot of thought, but we decided to go for it. And I do remember the revenue at the time was 8,000 a month, and I thought at the time that was like, man. And she ended up with maybe, I think it was like 2 grand, something like that, maybe 1,500 bucks in profit after she paid the teachers and everything else. And I was like, okay, well
This
that's
is really good.
that's awesome, or
Hmm.
whatever. It's extra money,
Yeah.
whatever. I'll take this over and I'll work on my business skills, and we'll try and build it up and whatever else. So, I mean, we honestly, we didn't know what we were doing, but we figured go for it. And somehow, I don't know how her name's Sonia. I don't know the person that used to own On Stage. I don't know how she convinced
The
the
landlord.
landlord to um, essentially let us take over the lease and everything after that. I guess he just didn't want to have to lease it out to somewhere else. It was easier for him. But I remember staying up till like 4 in the morning or even later crafting this letter that had to be sent in to tell him why we were going to be successful as business owners. And I wish I could find that today. I can't find it anywhere. I would love to read that again because I'm sure
Yeah.
it's pretty hilarious at this point. But
Yeah, what was in that letter?
it was me saying, "Hey, I know all these musicians. I can find all these people to hire, and
Oh, you
blah
were
blah blah.
making promises.
Expertise in music, blah blah blah." Well, of course, that's
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's not really what makes you succeed in owning a business.
Well, and that's so interesting, right? Because when you were crafting that letter, you were in your mind, that was kind of your business acumen on
Mm-hmm.
paper right there in that moment, like a snapshot. So you're right. That would be a cool thing to see because in your mind, you're thinking, this is what the landlord wants to see because this is what it will take in order for this business to be successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all these years of musical background and performing and all that stuff. And like you said, like that's not what it is. It really isn't. So that's so interesting. So you stayed up till 4 a.m. the night before crafting this letter, and what happened? You sent it in?
Well, it was due. it like we had to make a decision by a certain time, and actually, we were back and forth, and eventually, finally, prayed about it, whatever. Just decided I'm going for it. We decided we're going for it.
Hmm.
So I was like, all right, and of course it's the night before, so I didn't do anything. So I had to stay. I had to do whatever I had to do to get it done. So yeah, we sent it in. Uh, Landlord at the time was named Frank. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But Frank was a great guy. It was funny. He's from New York, and he was every much like a landlord from New York. Let me tell you everything about it. He said he doesn't care about really anything, but if we don't get paid on time, you're going to hear about it. Like very strong,
Oh,
very.
wow.
But he had a sweetheart inside of him actually too.
Uh,
It was funny. He was very rough on the outside, but that's
hmm.
what Sonia told us about actually. So we knew that going in. Which I guess is why he believed it as to begin with. But yeah, that was a great relationship all the time. He read what we said and spoke to him, and he just decided to go for it. I'm not really sure why, other than maybe he liked the idea of a music school and being part of that.
Well, and I mean, from his perspective too, you have to think like the business was already there. It was already running. It
Mhm.
was already generating obviously enough revenue to have paid him the previous months, with her. And so the only real difference is obviously you guys were taking over the reins but you weren't like the business was still there. And
Mhm.
so, it's like when you go to get a business loan, oftentimes they look more at the business than they do at you, because ultimately the business is what's generating the revenue, which is
Mhm.
ultimately what's going to pay back this loan. So that's interesting. So you got in and you didn't have any idea what you were doing, but a lot of it was this kind of this desire to get more like what was it? Because you
Well,
were already performing on stages, you were performing professionally. A lot of people would consider that like a great life, like
mhm.
performing in orchestras and all of that. So what was it that caused you to just be like, no, we don't want to do this anymore, we want to do a music school that's
Well,
just totally
I
unknown?
mean, we kept it going. I mean, we didn't. We even to this day we perform.
Hmm.
Okay.
So it is less. We take less gigs, but we still perform. But I mean, we knew that was not going to be something that was going to be everything. It never is as a perform as a classical musician unless you get these particular orchestras or whatever. So, um, and even then you don't get really paid very much. So, but it
Right.
wasn't really just about money. I mean, both of us loved to teach and really enjoyed doing that and took it very seriously as far as like what it can do for a kid's life and stuff. So that was always there and within us. And I feel like we honestly, it's just a kind of we're religious people, so we believe that was something that was kind of I felt it was just meant to do. So it was time to go that direction. So we go all into it, and we're both very like we don't quit. And when we see something, we always want to get better. Just constant improvement mindset. And so that was built through a lot of different things. And you have that mindset as a classical musician coming up, and or any kind of musician. You have to sit in a room for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever, day after day. Something's got to keep you going. So I think that training also, you take that into business. That it's a grind, right? So that there's no maybe from the outsider you think it's going to be easy or may look that way, but it is not. And we sucked. I mean, we you want some funny stories. I mean, we start out. That first, I would say the first 6 months going into that summer, we killed off a decent amount of the teachers we had inherited. Well, I mean,
Not
not literally
literally.
killed off, but I mean, well, I mean,
They left.
just us not knowing how to manage something and lead something or whatever else. Plus, we were still
Mhm.
involved in some of these other music schools, and so that turnover was kind of tricky, as far as like, just had so many people that they had the personal relationship with the old person. Anytime you come in with a new management, sometimes there's something there. And of course, we didn't know anything about management. I mean, we wanted to take care of people. I mean, we always wanted to do that. That was our mentality. But anyways, just over time, we honestly lost every one of those teachers. And by the end of the first summer, so we took it over in January 1, right? So
And the 2 weeks
Okay.
prior,
yeah.
that was kind of the funny thing is we decided we were going to renovate the place a little
Oh,
bit by painting. We decided to spend like
well,
2 weeks painting it.
yeah, yeah. We had to renovate the place. That's a whole nother story. But to continue we can maybe go back to that if you want to. But to finish what I was saying, by the end of the summer, I think we're down to like one teacher, and it was just Chris and Hannah
Oh, wow.
teaching everybody else. And Hannah teaches multiple instruments. She teaches a little guitar and some violin, and voice,
And piano.
and piano is what we mostly
Wow.
teach. By the way, I mean we're not teaching Flute,
Right.
horn, and harp. So I've had maybe 300 or 400 students over the years over there on stage. That was it. So we just taught piano, tons of that, and so we did all that, and then eventually got ourselves a teacher, started getting them
Y-
students, and just
And
built it piece by piece.
you guys were pretty newly married, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how long had you been married before opening, like actually at January 1, opening up the school?
It was less than a year.
Less than a year. Married in
May.
May, and then January the next year
Your
we have a school.
So your first year of marriage, the first big decision you make together is let's open up a music school.
Yeah.
Basically, we take over
Ah,
one,
that's
but yeah, I mean it was taking over one, but we redid everything, including like Hannah was saying, we spent our entire Christmas break. Like she had a Christmas break, and we were going to take over January 1. So like she was gone. In the back, she had a huge thing of thousands and thousands of props and costumes, and all this junk was in the back, and we wanted to spend that entire 2 weeks completely changing the place, making it look much better because it was pretty dark, and I don't need to go into that, but it did not look great at all. So I wanted to redo everything and get rid of all the junk in the back, and so we took all that stuff and put it in a storage locker essentially for her, so she could go grab it whenever she wanted. And then we painted the entire place, and by we it was mostly me, but I'm not even a painter, but here we are. I mean, the entire place, just constantly working. But
it's
yeah,
like, yeah, welcome to being a business owner, right?
exactly.
You're the painter, the handyman, the plumber, the electrician, like all wrapped in one. And
Mhm.
by the way, you got to run a business.
Yep,
Mhm.
and juggle.
So,
No kids at the time, so that helped.
yeah, so again, you're newly married. What were like some of the things like okay, so now it's been a few years since then. Um What would what would you say you've learned just in a snapshot if you were to like say, wow, if I could go back and tell that younger version of myself some advice, what would it be during that right during that opening time when you guys were learning how to communicate
Okay.
with one another and some of those things?
Well, that's a great question. So I don't know. I was also, I feel like I was just so impatient for everything. I wanted to have, I don't know how many students I ended up teaching. I probably had like 50 or 60 students at the other
Wow.
schools. I was teaching 6 days a week. I remember just being like, okay, I want more students. Like, I want more students with all these places. Um, even for I actually taught for Onstage. I taught in the like mornings and afternoons at another school, and then came over to Onstage before we had that, and then just like taught a couple of lessons on Saturday, like
Just
evenings,
nonstop.
um,
Wow.
to get that. But just having more patience for myself, um, I think that would have been good for me,
Mm,
and then things would have been smoother. Just getting to know the way we operate. Um,
right.
so that would have been for me more patience. What about
Yeah.
yourself?
Well, I mean, I guess it was a thing where as a couple, we are learning to work together and everything, and it's a quick way to you start out marriage and so as a couple, it's a thing where you have to learn to work together essentially, and you got different opinions on things, and of course, throughout marriage, you find ways to grow together and understand how to talk to each other and make that work. And the cool thing about us is we kind of we're not opposites in a lot of ways. We're not opposites. We're very much the same. But when it comes to uh, strengths and things like that, I was more on the we complemented each other basically. She was more operations, and I was more like planning and just thinking of what to do next and what's next, and how to think ahead type stuff. And she would help make sure it ran. I mean, it wasn't like that at first though, but we turned into that. At first, it was just kind of me, but then
It
doing
was
all
more
of it.
him making the decisions. And then, I remember like just honestly like choosing the paint color originally.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that. That was
Like, as though that's gonna make the difference between being wildly profitable and not,
like
right?
not at all. And we honestly just painted it like neutral color. We should have just painted the whole thing like gray or something.
Right,
But
right.
Yeah.
That would
we
have been fun.
painted it like colors that were popular for houses in that time, and just like we
Yep.
had different colors in different rooms of like different tans, and I remember picking out all the colors,
Yeah.
and that was an interesting process to see uh
You know,
at the beginning.
I think that running a business as a couple is like it can be such an incredible thing, and it can also be like really, really difficult. But one of the things that, because Tiffany and I, my wife and I learned that, you know, at the beginning, you can't be threatened by the other person's strengths, and I just, moment of honesty, that was totally me. Like I wanted to be the expert at everything. And yeah, she was there to help. Right.
Mhm.
But for me, it was like I was, in charge and making the big decisions. But what I didn't realize is that she had a strength that I didn't have, which sounds similar to you guys, which was, she's very organized, and she was kind of had a different way of thinking. It's like almost like her mind was thought in a grid. It's like, let's put this in this category and da 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 da, and organize it. And she was able to see problems before they were problems
Mhm.
through organization. Whereas with me, it was just the eternal optimist. Like, it'll work. Let's just force it through. And but but I think that was really for me, that was a really important lesson to learn, was to actually recognize that when you run an organization, nobody is an expert at everything. And so I don't care who they are, like nobody is. And so learning that sitting in the seat that you best fit, and allowing the other person to sit in their seat that they best fit, and staying in those seats actually causes the organization to grow so much faster, so much smoother. It saves so much stress. And so that's why I asked about like
Mhm.
some lessons like early on. Like, I wish, looking back at my younger self, I could have just said, Don't be threatened by your wife. She has strengths that are so uniquely different than you, and and it's okay. In fact, you're going to grow faster if you just let that play out, right? Instead of trying to fight it and be the expert at everything. Um, so I just find it interesting, and I've seen a lot of different couples over the years, run music schools together. It's actually more common than you might think. A lot of couples run their music schools, and um, I've seen that consistently. Like, once they discover that they each have a unique set of skills, and they allow each other to really just sit in that seat and thrive, that's when you start to see things happen. And even seen it with you guys too. But so that's interesting. But when it comes to growing, and like, you guys had to really change the culture, right? Because it was a kind of a theater music
Mhm.
program when you bought it, right?
Hmm.
It was, and we had to. We just made it our. We were classical musicians, and so everything's going to be note reading and that kind of thing. And we learned a lot about that over the time. Really, how to hire teachers, all kinds of different things. I mean, as
Right.
far as back to Chris, us as a couple, and a lot of times we finish an interview, and like I said, just an example. I'm the eternal optimist. I would really like this person or whatever else, and then
Yeah.
Hannah would tell me, why it wasn't going to work. And then I would just hate that because I thought that, but yeah, and sometimes if we did hire those people, she ended up being right. So you
Yeah.
start over time, you start to see that, and you start to develop. I mean, different ways of thinking of things, and seeing it through other people's eyes a little bit better, and that definitely helped, especially on the hiring
Yeah.
side of things. And
Well,
we're still evolving that, but we're pretty
yeah.
good at that now. I would say as a hiring couple, we have much better instincts on things.
And what we've learned from our experience, like what we looked for in our first teacher, is vastly different than
Yeah.
what we look for in a teacher at this point. Um, and what we
What would you say it is? What's the difference?
well, from the beginning, so I think that at that point we probably were looking for degrees.
Hmm.
Like,
Mm.
oh, this person has a doctorate degree. They they must be a great teacher. um, and that can be very true for sure. They can be, but we didn't think so much about like, okay, well, how will this person really interact with a 5-year-old piano student who's never played before? How they may be teaching a collegiate environment, which is cool, and that works. Every person's different, but just looking at that compared to like, okay, there also might be a teacher out there that we would have never considered in the past. Like when we first started, there might have been a teacher out there who maybe didn't have maybe didn't even have a music degree, had a degree in something else, and maybe teaching or something, and we would have never considered them because of we were looking for specific things that you know
Yeah.
we've
Yeah,
widened our horizons on
yeah, and
that.
when we sold lessons, I was the one that did most of the sales, of course. So like I would sell it like, hey, our teachers are amazing, and they have
We have these
they're
degrees.
incredible. These degrees, they've had all this years of teaching, and that's who I wanted to have on our roster of teachers. And I wanted to be like this incredible, like
People
higher
that
level stuff. We have these
hmm
amazing teachers, and we're going to be great because of that. And you can that's you can do something like that and make that very niche if you have if you're in a big market and you can really. But I mean, if you want to actually make you know appeal more to the masses, it's going to be more elementary age type stuff. You're going to need to find teachers that are fun teachers that are energetic, that have the students have a good time, and then because then they're going to practice, and then if they're going to practice, then they'll actually stay with you for a length of time. Of course, we do have teachers. We have over 40 teachers, so we have some teachers that are more on the super serious side, but they're like three or four out of those 40. And then
Wow.
we'll direct people to those teachers when need be, so they get their needs met. But everybody else is more on the energetic, hey, let's have fun side, that kind of thing.
I think that's so true. I had to learn that same lesson. And I know some music schools, the approach is different and the goal is different,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, so all the teachers have degrees, and I think that's totally fine and legitimate. But I think what's interesting is that there isn't necessarily, at least in my experience, there's not necessarily a correlation between kids that learn more from degree teachers versus non-degree teachers. It's probably like a really controversial thing to say, but it just was my experience. And it sounds like your guys' experience as well. And not only that, like I actually found that some of my best teachers but when I say best, I don't mean necessarily they had the most knowledge. I mean they were able to retain their students the longest. That's sort of that's how I measure, you know, good, better, best,
Mm-hmm.
uh, personally. And again, maybe not everybody measures it that way, but to me, I want if a student can't learn if they're not in lessons, like they can't learn at all. If they're not in lessons, they're not learning at all, right? So
Mm-hmm.
keeping them in lessons longer is actually a way to get them to learn more. So, but I didn't find any correlation to teachers that had degrees keeping students longer versus teachers that didn't have degrees. If anything, I would say it was the opposite. It was the teachers that actually had more, like you said, charisma, energy, personality. They actually cared about building a relationship with these students. for the long term. And those were the ones that actually had that were my best teachers. Some of them had degrees, but there was no correlation to degree versus non-degree. Would you guys say
Hmm.
that's the same, or was there? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty. I think so.
Yep, exactly the same. I mean, in fact,
It's
some of the people, one of the persons that I won't say the name, but one of the people I almost didn't want to hire at first, is still with us and been with us a long time. And she's one of our best teachers. And I didn't want to hire that person because they didn't have a music degree. And, you know, so it ended up working out great. Yeah, I've been with us a long time and tons of students. And, so thankful I made that decision. But, we went with it. We were just super picky at the beginning. Yeah. So, of course,
well, we didn't know either.
we didn't know. We didn't know. And that's kind of what part of this podcast I think is about. It's trying to help people because I wish, love to share some things. Um, I guess through some stories, but that's certainly one of them. We got been some interesting hires. Like they have to remain nameless, but a certain guitar teacher that I mean, doctorate degree, quite honestly, full of themselves, and put it that way. And we unloaded on him a lot of students from a teacher that was leaving us, unfortunately, and he pretty much finished them off. You know, um,
We went from like 30 to
I don't know what it was.
something. And we're like, there were at least 30 students in the mix.
Yeah, and he just
And he lost them all.
yeah, he had this particular method. It had to be this way or nothing else, and whatever. And so and the kids didn't practice. All that type of stuff. He just they quit pretty quickly. It didn't work. The transition didn't work, and because we wanted to get somebody. We thought, hey, here's this guy, a doctorate degree, and got his own website, got his own all this other junk, and bring him in, and failure. So
For those
that's
students.
yeah,
Yeah.
failure for the students as far as like them continuing because you're right. It doesn't matter how amazing the teacher is if they're not taking lessons, then they're not going to get any better. They're done. They're finished. And of course, your
Right.
business doesn't have a business either. So
Yeah, and what's even worse is that a lot of times when kids quit lessons because of that, that is their view of music lessons
mm-hmm,
forever, right? I don't ever want to take music lessons again because it was like lessons with that guy.
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that oftentimes is the case, right? A bad experience just sort of taints the rest of it.
For sure.
So, what did you do with him? How did you handle him?
Well, he ended up sort of finishing himself off. Actually, he ended up claiming he had mental issues or something like that, and he resigned. But
Wait, he claimed he had so okay,
he
walk me
couldn't
through that
stand
conversation.
working it on stage was so horrible for him um, that that he couldn't take it. Uh, he was not having
Was
fun.
this in an email or did he actually have a
Email.
conversation with
It
you
was an
about?
email,
So he sends you an email. He says, this place is so awful to work in
something
and
like
it's
that.
causing mental
Uh
stress
huh.
or something."
Right.
Well, I think also that sometimes it comes hard for it doesn't. I think it's a tricky thing for teachers to manage their expectations, especially like if a teacher has only taught out of their own home, or maybe they taught in a collegiate environment, coming to like a music lesson studio where there's you're kind of probably in most schools in a row, like practice rooms in a college. Um, it's a different experience than, at your own home, and when a teacher has different flexibilities as well, teaching from their house versus teaching at a studio, because there's certain policies of the studio and there's less flexibility. It's not like, if you run your lessons 5-10 minutes behind or whatever, it's a different experience.
Right. But you guys did it, right? Like, I mean, you guys went from, again, you were professional musicians, or you are professional musicians performing on stage. You did the university thing, you saw all of that, and then you were able to transition from that type of teaching or that type of experience to the 6-year-old Susie that doesn't care about any of that stuff. How did you do it?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Okay. Well,
Mhm.
I really enjoyed working with children. That was something that I did really enjoy. I don't mind teaching the 3-year-olds. um, I enjoy teaching the little ones. I enjoy seeing the little ones learn. So, for me, it was, um, I, I do think my perspective shifted more because I did start music when I was 3. So I remember going through
Wow.
music and being little and a little bit of that. And like, okay, this is something that you do, and this is part of your weekly schedule. And so I kind of wanted to bring that to other kids. I do think my mindset has shifted as the more I taught to, there are kids who don't practice. There are kids who practice 2 times a week. And, you know, but that's okay because they're enjoying music. It's still benefiting them and it becomes part of their lives. And even if they're not professional musicians, which most won't be, um, that they get to maybe when they're an adult or they're in high school or whenever, they can sit down and maybe they can play some favorite songs. It can be something that's just them, an outlet for them to express themselves and have that skill.
Yeah. So your perspective shifted because you realized that all of this head knowledge that you had from college didn't necessarily matter as much to the,
Mhm.
again, 6-year-old Susie or the 3-year-olds or the 4-year-old. That's amazing. You did 3-year-olds. That takes a next level patience. But just the younger students, because let's be honest, most of the students are younger, right? Was that your experience? Most of these people signing up for lessons
Mhm.
were beginner and they were younger.
Yes. Most of the students I had, of course, I've had students for years that have progressed, done well. Even in our school, we've had students who go and pursue music in college. But that's not the majority. Most people take lessons in the elementary age, I'd say, is our biggest demographic.
Mhm.
Um, and the parents, most parents just want them. I understand more now that I'm a parent. Um, but they want their kids to have an experience to it.
Hmm.
And they want their kids to have that as a part of their lives.
Yeah,
What about you, Chris?
I was
What
gonna
was
say,
that
as far as
experience
me,
like for
just
you?
real quick. I mean, I taught when after I finished my college in Indiana. Long story short, I went back to Cincinnati and I was driving around to people's homes. Worked for a company there called Piano Lessons in Your Home. Drove to people's homes and taught. When I first started doing that, of course, I had the mindset that like someone straight out of college has. Hey, everybody's going to be the next, I don't know, Rubenstein or whatever, and so I'm gonna
Yeah.
uh, at least that mentality. And of course, I had to change that pretty quickly if I was going to keep my students. I mean, some of the comments I got is like, Chris is very passionate, but and very patient because I was very patient and I would sit there and really engage and try to get this 5-year-old to do whatever. But at the end of the day, the kid just needed to have more fun. And
Mm.
so I learned that and really just kind of the hard way. I probably didn't have great retention at first, but a lot of things they sent my way was like another 5-year-old. Here's another 5-year-old. I'm like, man, I would just take anything for 10-year-old or whatever. But that's a
Give
lot
me
of
somebody older.
that's a lot of what you get when you first start teaching. That's what we
Yeah.
get thrown your way if you work at a place like on stage or you get this.
And it does seem that there are certain teachers that eventually, like you say, you didn't get it at first, but you started to, over time, student after student, you started to realize that you needed to make an adjustment towards maybe having a little more fun. Maybe not every kid is going to be a professional musician or head to music conservatory or any of it. It seems like some teachers actually get that and some just don't get that. Like they
Mhm.
they are destined to be the one teacher in the world that's only ever going to take students, that's going to, that'll go on to be the next Mozart, right? Like I and I mean it's kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, when I say it that way, but it does feel that way. Like
Mhm.
it seems like some teachers take themselves so seriously that it really doesn't it they and I guess ultimately really what that's saying is that they're not really they really shouldn't be teaching in the music school environment, right? Because that's just not the reality of the students that you're going to have.
We do have a few people like that, and the reason why we're able to help them is because we have a less amount of days of teaching, and we pick from all the students, and we're large enough, that we can keep them basically booked. And I will say though, those teachers that when we've handpicked their students, and ones that want the more driven approach or whatever else, when we give it to those particular teachers, they tend to stay with that teacher for 4 or 5 years or whatever. So that is a good positive side of it, but it does not serve the masses. And if you were starting one of these schools, or you're already in one or whatever else,
It'll be a slower growth.
much slower growth. I would not hire for that, nor would I sell my business that way as far as like marketing. The important thing for marketing, I'm sure, what we've heard from David all over the years is, hey, have the parent picture their student, or their child in the lesson, having a great time, or performing in the recital, playing through their songs, having that accomplishment. And that's what you get them to picture that, and really you sell that, and that's what you produce for the kids. And then they learn music along the way, it becomes part of their life. Amazing. Perfect. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Well, and so like, okay, so when you first took over the school, you had all these teachers, and then slowly but surely, you guys kind of whittled them down to mainly you guys teaching by what, the end of the summer, going into
Mm-hmm.
school
Yeah, it
season.
was kind of a transition into the summer. There weren't tons of teachers at the point. I don't know exactly how many there were. It was less than 10.
Yeah, right.
Um, it was less than 10 teachers
And some
previously.
of them hardly worked.
Yeah, they only had like maybe a couple of hours on one day.
So in some ways, you sort of just came in and you kind of wiped the slate clean, if you will, over the course of 6 months, and sort of started over. So this is sort of what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So you now had to rebuild a teaching staff. You had the lease, you had the payment coming every month. You were teaching, you were still performing. What were some of the, like, for somebody that's maybe in this position of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm a solo teacher and I'd like to grow. How do I do that? How do I
Ooh.
go from like myself to having another teacher, having multiple teachers, so that I can expand to 100 students, maybe 150 students at some point?
Hmm.
How did you guys do that? Like,
First,
get starting to hire teachers.
you have to kind of believe you can do it, which that takes a while to get over. Even now, it's like, how in the world is this business here that we have? And actually, all along the way, I still think that. But sometimes you feel like, how is this even? How does all this exist? Especially the recitals. Like, what in the world? And even back when I was that size, when we just started or whatever else, like, what in the world am I doing? That's kind of always there. So you have to understand that that's normal. So let's understand that to begin with. All right. So then I would say just consistently trying to push and figure things out. And along the way, I'll kind of talk about the beginnings here in a second, but it really helped to have people along the way, such as yourself. Like, we joined with you in 2000 and
It's COVID.
2020. COVID is when that happened, and you really helped us tons, um, and sort of try to follow in your footsteps essentially, and that really helped us. But even before we got there, back to this, ground, starting from the ground up, essentially, like, so. I mean, yeah, that first year we made less than $10,000. The entire business, it wasn't negative, I will say, because a lot of businesses go negative that first year. So, but that was with Hannah and Chris doing all the work, basically, of the teaching and everything. It wasn't even like we had, I mean, we made it through I guess, like I said, coming out of the summer, we were losing money. I didn't have, coming out of the summer, we were using reserve money to pay the rent, and I was like, I just kept thinking, well, if we get one student a week, literally that's where I was at that point. If we could just find a way to get one student a week, and if that phone rang, and boy, I had my cell phone on there. That phone rang, I dropped everything in the world to answer that phone and put on the best show, like whatever it is I could get that to get that person to come in. Um, and then we roll out the red carpet best we could because it was so awkward. They would come in, there'd be nothing going. Like
It'd
at the
just be
time, there were
me teaching,
5 rooms, nothing going on.
just one person teaching.
One person teaching, like either myself or Hannah, or sometimes both of us. But it just seemed totally. It's like you go to a restaurant and you're the only one there. It just feels awkward, right? You wonder why
Yeah.
that's the case. I mean, and there's that time where it's kind of like that,
Right.
and it is,
Everyone has to go through that time.
yeah.
Yep.
And you don't know if you're gonna, but you just keep plugging along, and you just nowadays you have is more and more resources, like Mr.
So,
Gates.
but coming back to hiring that first, so like
Okay.
when you guys were at a point where nothing was going on, right? Like I think one of the challenges, and I've heard this a lot from school owners, is like, how do I know that if I hire this person, that I'll be able to give them students? Number one,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, so
And number two, what do I promise them? Because you don't want to overpromise, right? Well, I overpromised, so that's there's a whole other story there. But lots of overpromising, just getting them all excited. But you got to be careful because if you overpromise and then of course you underdeliver, then you know you've got expectations that aren't met, and so you're already off to a bad start. So how did you guys deal with that with those first few teacher hires?
yep. So you start with a couple different things. First of all, you can use students that you personally have and offload some of them to give them a better start. If
Is
that
that what you did?
You can do that. I think we did that in some cases. Yes.
I think
Depend.
we started a little bit with some different instruments than what we
Yeah, yeah. We
left.
started with like the instruments that we didn't teach. So when we pulled those people in, but we didn't overpromise in the sense that it was just like, hey, this one day is what we're going to build on. Work on filling that day, and when you get to the next, we'll add another day if that gets filled, essentially. And so we tried not to overpromise in that way. And essentially, it's just us literally filling in every gap everywhere that can be filled in to create the best customer experience, while trying to pull in these teachers and try to give them the best experience we can, and giving some of our students to them when need be, and essentially trying to make them happy so that that will be stable, so we'll have something to build off of, to get them another day, or maybe that's all they wanted or whatever. And then we look for the next person. And now there's more people in the studio. So when parents come in, it doesn't seem as weird, and you just start growing. And
Oh,
I think free marketing stuff is important too. I mean, just like,
at the beginning, word of mouth was really
yeah,
important.
word of mouth is really just anything to get people in the door that was free or very cheap. We did even road signs. I don't even think of doing that anymore, but we used to have road signs. I would go put up road signs, um, just any kind of, just the old school, like,
Try to get the siblings in.
yeah, upsell,
That's
whatever. I
very
mean,
smart.
but you
Yep.
don't think of those things back then. At least back then there wasn't as much this information around, to
Hmm.
understand how to do this. It was, but now it's even more plentiful. I think if you just really get out there, and there's a lot of resources on YouTube and this, that, and the other. That's the other thing is, YouTube was coming. This is 10 years ago essentially. So we've had the business basically 10 years, and
Okay.
as time goes on, the YouTube became more and more of a thing, and now there's just tons of stuff. We listen to YouTube things all the time, still do, um, to keep upgrading our leadership abilities. What Anything that's required, is constantly learning there. Sorry, I went off subject. So yeah, with the
No,
teachers,
that's all right.
really with the teachers, I think the key here is we got good at interviewing them and understanding who's gonna sell the lesson and who's gonna keep them there. And getting that, there were a couple key teachers that were like godsends. I won't name names, but essentially, like, it was so nice to have this particular person
They were.
because she brought in more people, and
It was very sticky. We
yeah.
call them sticky teachers.
I
Um,
like that.
so yeah, you're very sticky teachers.
So I mean, as far as attracting them, really, kind of, I think for myself, I always try to really kind of help them understand our purpose and how dedicated Chris and Hannah are to it, and how much we love it, and inspire them with that kind of energy, even though I didn't have as much financial to give them. Sell the, you got to be a good You got to be good as a salesperson, even with your teacher you're talking to, especially at the small. They got to understand your willingness and your want to really get good and understand where that comes from yourself. And uh and some people may pass, but some people won't, and you'll get somebody, and if they're sticky like Hannah said, you can start building, and just I guess it really just kind of plowing into it, but it does help to have that teacher like we were talking about before. Don't hire the doctor person. Hire this person that has that attitude, that kind of energy, that the kids are going to have a great time in the lesson. That's who you want to hire, because then you don't have to. I mean, those leads are precious, especially when you're a low revenue and everything else.
Every week matters. You don't want to lose. You don't want
Yeah,
to lose
we
your
came out
leads.
of the summer with like 30 students, and we had like 4,500 well, I guess at the time it was more closer to 4,000 as far as our rent that was due, and that was our main thing. The light bill was not that much after that. So, but
So it's just making the lease payment every month.
yeah, I mean, we
That's the
were
goal,
working to pay the lease payment and very
right?
slowly growing.
Yeah. So, okay, so this was about 10 years ago that you
Mhm.
kind of started and opened it up. At what point would you say things started to really roll for you? Where the marketing was kicking in, the students were coming in, and
Yep.
you got to that, 2, 300 mark?
Well, and that I think our growth was slowed a little bit by myself. Um, but basically, because of I don't know, I think the next thing was to get to that 2 or 300, you got to start getting admin,
Yeah.
and I had in my head I could do that, but
And teach.
uh, but Chris, what really started helping us is our first initial thing was Chris kind of he started offloading his students to other teachers, and then he just worked on sales, marketing, honestly, all of the operations.
Right, right. I did
Uh-huh.
everything at that time
And then
on notebook paper, mind you. At one point,
Oh, wow.
notebook paper, and then like free scheduling software. There's a scheduling software called Setmore. Anyways, that was our first official one, which I would not recommend. But anyways,
but yeah, we did that, and then um, I think that was where really starting the growth, like the faster growth, was when Chris really focused in on the marketing and stopped teaching a little bit. You had like a day or two.
yeah,
Um, and then, when he completely stopped teaching, got more growth there. Um, and then, we ended up having like our first kid, and that was a great excuse um, uh, for me to stop teaching as much. I still taught after our first
yeah.
one
She taught.
quite a bit, but I did teach a little less, and I started helping with the
Yeah.
admin from
Yeah, I mean,
there.
she had the kid in the lesson sometimes, or I would have, you know, the little tiny kid next to me trying to keep him quiet, keep the milk going, teaching the lesson. And she would do that sometimes and run the place on her phone while teaching the lesson, which we would not like anyone on the phone doing that. But she would
Just
keep it going,
just see at sometimes the switch of like, hey, I'm going to be sick. I got to go tell this teacher
right, or whatever. Yeah,
because it was small enough at that point that you could do it in a
just
situation.
multitasking the absolute, everything out of it. Essentially,
You guys essentially were running everything
yeah, you keep adding
with
leverage as
like
you go. We were too slow to add
right,
leverage. Period.
right.
Y-
So you didn't have enough revenue to come in to pay somebody to answer phones and
Mhm.
run the admin. So you were doing that, plus you were teaching, plus you had a little baby, and then you also had some teachers that you were managing as well.
Hmm.
Well, by the time our first child, Christian, came, we had a decent foothold on things, as far as like our business was pretty solid. In fact, that we knew kind of what was coming in, and it had a flow to it that we weren't too worried about. It's in small business, you never know, but um, it was pretty consistent at the time. Enough to get us a home loan and stuff. So we had so that gave us a bit of a foothold. that we could work with. And then each time you get one of those, you can add some leverage to it because you can take more risk. And I would say that on our side, we went too safe. Um, we could have done more faster if we were riskier, which we could have easily done
Pre-kid.
pre pre having a child, or even I mean, quite honestly, we were living at her mom's house, so we didn't have living expenses. And by the
So
way, we were
what do you
driving
mean?
an hour and a half one way every day to get to on stage.
Oh, wow.
It goes on
What
and
would
on.
you say why would you take more, like, what kind of risk would you have taken going
Well,
back, like, if you had gone faster?
I might have just went ahead and tried to. I was really safe with the money. I could have tried to spend it more to make more. Try to really
Like,
kind
on
of.
marketing?
I was kind of scared to put money into the marketing machine to because I didn't know enough about it. So it was a knowledge issue, and you don't know. I mean, I got calls from all kinds of people saying, "Hey, why don't you be in this magazine or this, that, all this different stuff?" People, and I would sit there and think about that. Maybe I should do it. There was no guidance there at that time. I think if somebody was really guided, say, "Hey, at this size, you should probably focus on this," which is kind of what you did. Hey, at this size, let's focus on this. Then as you get a little bit more revenue, let's focus on maybe we can start going into this area as far as marketing, and then you start to get your numbers and you start to understand. Hey, if I put this in, I'll get this, and then that gives you more leverage. You understand. Hey, I put $100 in advertising, I get 300 in students or whatever. Then you have more ability to see that, and then you can plan on it more, which then allows you to then purchase more leverage somewhere. As long as you have the knowledge to know, like, hey, I'm going to hire this admin, and they're going to be able to do all these phone calls and all this junk I'm not able to do because I'm teaching, and I might be able to think again, to think about what I can do next. Because normally you couldn't think; it was just go 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 go, and
Right.
so you're
How many
buying
s
time. Sorry, go ahead.
how many students did you have when you did end up hiring your first admin?
I think it was like it was at least 250, which is insane. We should have hired him way well before. I would
That's
say
impressive.
I don't know what you would recommend. I mean, with a husband wife team, and me only teaching maybe 2 days, we could have done maybe 150, something like that. And I think you had the same kind of experience, if I recall. At some point, we
Yeah, I
decided,
was
hey,
I was at about 180
mhm.
before I hired my first person,
And it was probably too
and
late for you, right? You probably now you think that was too late, right?
I think 150 to 180 is probably a good
That
number,
was a
but honestly, I've seen people that have hired at 100, and
Mhm,
because here's the deal, if hiring helps you grow faster, then and you have budget to do that, then I say go for it.
mhm,
So it isn't necessarily a hard number. I don't like a number of students. I think it's more how you're positioned to grow.
mhm,
But 250, I mean, that's amazing. 250, 260. That's how many you guys had, and you just were hiring your first person. So that first person was probably coming into a situation where they're like, so much is going on. Like, what was that experience like?
yeah. Well, think about it. It was 20. It was honestly, we didn't hire our first person until it was like right after the pandemic.
We
That
had
was our very
Wow.
first person. So
we had hired someone a very part time right before the pandemic. We had started. I think we started in
okay,
January,
okay.
and then of course everything like shut down. I think that person that we had hired moved back someplace else. Actually, um, when we went, we ended up stopping everything in person and
Yeah,
all that. So after that, when it was in the fall of
yeah.
2020, is really when we got started with our first admin and getting it started. Honestly, at that point, by 2020, I was doing quite a bit less teaching. Um, so she just kind of we didn't really even have systems at that point. We had a Hannah system and we had a Chris system. That was variable based upon what we remembered on our student base. So, we sat together and like kind of did admin together. And then eventually we kind of came up with systems then, that worked for that situation, and then we kind of started building up and building up and building up from there. But that was kind of how that started. It was just kind of like sitting together. Oh, you can you grab that? I'll grab this kind of situation, and then
S-
eventually develop more and more systems.
Yeah.
So if Hannah now could go back to Hannah then, what advice would you give her?
Right when we were starting in admin,
Mhm.
I I don't know that I would have changed a whole lot actually, because I do think there is a point to learning by experience. And I didn't know because I didn't really have any business experience.
Mhm.
My jobs have been teaching music. So I never worked as an admin. So I didn't know enough to really know what I needed to know. So just
Mhm.
learning those systems and I think trying again back to the original mindset of just trying to get progress and to make things efficient and as easy as possible for the admin and for our business to run smoothly.
Maybe so let me ask it this way. Uh, what do you know now that you didn't know then?
Well, a whole lot.
Mhm.
A whole lot. Um,
Just specifically about
Mhm.
hiring admin and training and all that.
yeah, it's still evolving for myself. I definitely have. We've definitely made some bad decisions on hiring admin, and we've made great decisions on hiring admin, and some, in terms of training, I think that as you grow, you build your systems. And what works at 150 students doesn't work maybe at 300, but you won't know that um, until you get to the 300. So with my training, I definitely have a system now that I go through. I mean, I do think that now I highly encourage anybody to do training. Try to make videos, you know, try to make their
Mhm.
own little series of videos of how they do the task. Makes training easier. In terms of hiring admin, I really think it depends on what you're looking for and what kind of admin tasks. Because honestly, with admin, that's such a broad word. It can mean
Right.
so many things depending on your school. Some schools, it may be just someone who is greeting the students and checking them in, and that may be for some schools that's what their admin does. Um, to someone who works an admin who does this all the scheduling and all the different things, who does sales calls, who does uh, your schedule upkeep. There's a lot of different facets of the admin um, that we've grown into.
I remember uh, we created we did this for our teachers too, actually, but for our office staff, we created a video hub. We call it the office staff training hub, and we literally took every category that we could think of, and my manager Chloe would continually upload new videos to this hub, and it was just like everything that you would ever do, right? But broken up into small chunks of like, you know, sometimes it would be a 5-minute video, sometimes it would be like a 30-second video, but it was just like, here's how you schedule a student for the recital, and then she would kind of do a screen share and she would do it and then put it in the category of all things recital, right? Here's the email we send out at this time and this day before the recital, and here's how to do it. Here's how to sign up a new student, like all these different videos. And that way it made training for her really, really streamlined, right? Because then take her out of the equation, bring in a new manager. It's the same thing, right? So I love what you're saying about the video thing because I agree. Like that's training can be so difficult if you're like reinventing it every single time you hire somebody. You don't have to do that. So streamlining those kind of things, especially as you guys continue to grow and hire more people and have it be you know, because otherwise you're literally all your entire job is just hiring and training and hiring and training. That's all you ever do,
Hmm.
you know? And so creating systems, not just within the business itself, like to run the business, but actually creating systems to hire and train the
Mm-hmm.
people to run the systems,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And finding the right people, just a quick thing, higher attitude above aptitude. I think when it comes to admin, the attitude is critical there.
Yeah, you can't train attitude. You can train skill, but you just can't train attitude. Yeah, I love that. That's so true. Uh, you see that all the time. Did you guys find that there were certain types? So we talked about hiring teachers, right? Like not
Hmm.
worrying so much about the degree. That was like the thing that you focused on at the beginning, and then you realized you kind of moved away from that. Did you have any false assumptions when you were hiring admin at the beginning, thinking that they needed to be a certain way, and then realizing not necessarily?
Oh, it's okay. It's their world. Yeah.
Well, it's both of our worlds, but
Yeah.
with I think when I like our first admin, what I was looking for was someone who had worked in a business as like a front desk admin or like a front office, had done admin work. And I don't know, and that could be someone who maybe had that experience, um or maybe they were working in healthcare, like that whole check-in process, and then in the
Right.
US you go to the doctor's office, there's always a person there at the front who goes through the procedures um, with you, greet you and all of that. I think uh, for our in person, we're a little bit different now because we do try to hire a little bit more specific things um, than we did then. Because at that point, we were just trying to hire an admin to do a little bit of everything um,
Right.
in terms of running the day, not so much on the marketing, but someone who could do sales, someone who can put someone in schedule, who can let the teachers know, who can talk to the parents about customer service. That was what we were looking for in our first person. Um,
So great on the phone doesn't always also include great with details. So, I mean, that's what we've kind of learned where we are right now. I mean, sometimes you get both. Sometimes you get both. But great on the phone, with sales and that kind of mindset does not always lend itself to, being very straight and narrow and
very
keeping
detailed.
great details and billing and whatever else your systems are. That's not always the best. Kind of depends on where you are. If you're just going to hire one person, kind of decide where you might need the help. And again, if let's say you're just a solopreneur at this point, you're the only manager or whatever, you're kind of doing everything. I would hire your opposite. So if you're great at sales, I'd hire somebody to do the other thing, and to be your first hire.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, if and you could just take the sales if they were great at the other thing. Yeah.
I think that's a no, that's a great idea. But yeah, just trying to look for people, 'cause there's always a fine line when you're trying to look for someone who can do a little bit of everything, of finding someone who will talk to your customers but also get their tasks done, who's also enough detail oriented to not make too many mistakes on, on things, so that things will be well. Another thing that we always look for is the type. We do always check people for typing tests, who are going to be working like admin roles. A little less important for sales, but admin roles generally we look for people who type 40, at least
Minimum.
40
Yeah.
as a minimum. So that generally shows that they're going to be quick enough on the computer to be able to take
When do you
notes.
when do you test that?
Typingtest.com. And
Just a
we
free thing.
we have them come in and we teach them. We pull up our software. We teach them very, very, very basics of what they would be doing, so that they have an idea for that interview of what we're going to be referencing. And then we make them do very simple things. Hey, Johnny called in and they need to bank their lesson. Can you do that? And we teach them how to do it, and then ask them to do it right afterwards. And if they're lost and not understanding what tabs are and all that, that person ain't going to work. If they're just like boom, 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 we ask them to craft the text as well.
That's
And when
also
they
really
write,
important.
yeah, when they write that text, how was their energy? Are they super straight? Are they, what kind of, how is that text crafted? Is it like with
Is
a
it
smile?
is it
You know,
compared? and how it fits with your school. So we always try to have we look for the way that someone naturally sends something or
Mhm.
crafts a message to his parent, because that's
Mm,
just generally going to be their default. Of course, people can learn specific scripts and what have you, but you can see if that fits your school, whether they're going to be sometimes maybe too casual. Are they going to use a bunch of abbreviations or what have you, or are they too formal, and how that might fit.
Or they just may have awful grammar. I mean, they may not, it shows you a lot. That typing test, and then like some of our better admins type like 80 words a minute, 80, 90, something. Those are the ones that can do the work really fast. But yeah, but they're not necessarily the best
that's
ones.
interesting. Yeah, we never did typing tests. I think it's a great idea though, because they do have to get around on a computer. They have to. We hired people. Oh man, talk about bad memories. We hired some people that just frankly they would flat out say, "I'm not techie. I don't do the computer real well." And it's like we're literally hiring you to do the computer. But we hired them. But the reason we hired them was because usually it was because we were desperate, which is always like a major red flag. Uh, but uh, but but they were really good with the customers, and they
Mhm.
engaged with the teachers and the students. But they never did. They would never last because ultimately, like you say, they have to be able to get around on the computer. And there are times when it's busy where you have to multitask. You have to be able to be you got somebody on hold, you're signing up a student, you're dealing with a teacher, all just the chaos of uh running a lobby. And they really are at the command center of that, having to do that well. So now you guys are in this position where you've grown, you've gotten to a size to where, I mean, there's like less than 1% of music school owners ever reach what you guys have accomplished. It's really quite impressive. Uh, and so you're running multiple locate. How many locations do you guys have?
It, basic, just three.
Just
But
three.
we're trying to plan. We're trying to plan to create a backdrop, and we've recently made some changes in our whole mentality and the way we're going to set things up. We haven't really talked to you about this yet, but setting things up so that it can grow,
To
you know,
multiple schools, to
to
even more.
to many many more, so that we can follow a formula. We're trying to make that formula
Mhm.
that we know is consistent and things, so that we can plant schools in a faster fashion and grow faster.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I guess just the general overarching question is, aside from the future question, because I'm glad you said that, but just in terms of what you have currently right now, three locations, nearly a
Mhm.
thousand students a week. How is your current structure? Like, what is your current like? How are you doing it? How are you running
Well, that's
all
the
of those
thing.
students every
That's
week?
the thing is it's changing. I mean, it's we just changed it, so I mean, I can tell you what it's gonna. Well, it's sort of in flux right now,
Yeah, it's just in a flux, and
but we've
we'll
learned something
see.
I would like to share. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I
This
mean,
is one of the things I've always admired about you guys. You're always tweaking and trying to figure out a more efficient way to do what you're doing. And I that's just I think that's really cool. And I mean it's working obviously because you guys can just keep getting bigger and bigger. But I think that's an important lesson, right? Like always trying to improve what you are. So tell me what are you moving towards? What's this structure that you're
well,
wanting to move towards?
what we were just talking about is that admin that's going to come in. We tried to hire this perfect. It's kind of difficult to hire that person. They are out there, and you can find them, but somebody that's good on the phone, that'll show up consistently, that can't handle the craziness of like bunch of people coming in, talking to them, and still handling the
Right.
task work. And that person is going to have to work a weird shift because they're working like a 2 to 8 or something, or when is it busy? It's like for most businesses, probably it's like at that 2 to 8 p.m., 2 to 8:30, 1:30 to 8, something like that. And that's a weird shift for most people. A lot of people, if they have a family, they want to be done by 5, 6 ish so they can get home and at least see their kids or whatever else is going on. So you have that. It's like
it's
keeps
hard to find.
narrowing and narrowing and narrowing it, and then you're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack at some point. And that's we went to that. That made it very difficult. So with that said, it certainly is hard to hire that at scale. We have our whole stories behind all the difficulties there, which David, almost all of them. So, because that's, when we were seeking advice, mostly it was regards to that. So, what we're trying now, and I think that's going to be successful, is we're moving the operations of the thing, the back end junk, even the sales, to the Philippines, all of it, literally
Wow.
all of it. The only thing that the people in our locations are going to be doing is they're going to be handing out the buttons for our different. They're going to be handing out the different reward program thing that we have. They're going to
Uh-huh.
be handing
Yeah.
out
Just
the,
making
the
sure.
welcome folders, making sure that it's a great experience for the
Yeah.
customers that come in, and let them know about our, hey, we got these new trial lesson. We want to like make that trial lessons more special, blah blah blah. I don't go into much detail, not required. But essentially they get to focus on the experience, their one-on-one, and they're not going to have to be sitting there worried about, okay, I got to get all these makeups in and whatever else, all the different admin stuff. The advantage of the Philippines is that, number one, there it's much cheaper. Number two,
Hmm.
there's no taxes. There's no payroll taxes, none of that junk. It's so that makes it even cheaper. Not and then on the other hand, here in the U.S., sometimes it's hard to find people that want to work, and in the Philippines, they want to work, and they want to be very diligent. I mean, of course, it runs a gamut as anywhere, any group of people, but just they really want to get something done over there and improve and see themselves move up, and when they earn, like $10 an hour over there is awesome to them.
So when you say move everything over to the Philippines, I'm just trying to make sure I fully understand what you're saying. So you're saying all the calls
Mm-hmm.
that come in, all the emails back and forth, all of the essentially online tasks that could be done remotely are now going to be handled by a team in the
In the
Philippines,
future.
and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Still in
and
progress.
still in progress. Yeah, this is the plan.
Mhm.
And that, but you still have to have a physical presence, obviously, and so you're still going to have a front desk person there, uh, but their full job will just be to interact with teachers and students.
Mm-hmm.
What about when teachers call in sick
We have a teacher
and
liaison.
now okay, so that's not going to be a Philippines
No,
thing,
he's in
not
person,
anything with
and
teachers.
he's that's our leadership. That's one of our leader positions. So we have a teacher liaison
Right.
that's on the ground. He goes to the different locations, meets with people. If we're having issues with this teacher signing trials, if we start getting bad comments, he's going to go sit in the lessons and figure out what's going on. He helps if somebody's out or they didn't give us enough notice or what. They dump that all on him. He's got to
Basically,
deal with it.
a manager position.
Yeah, it's management of the teachers only, which is a large
Yeah.
part of the business. And then we have who we just hired, a Filipino, but he was actually spent a lot of time in the States. But a Filipino that is our manager now, and as of a
Operations.
week and 2 days,
But
and
this
he's
is in person. This is person on
nope, he's
site.
in the
No.
Philippines.
So he
He's
okay.
going to
Okay.
run. He's going to be able to check everything. He can see all of it, and because remotely you can pretty much see everything. You can't see what's
Task
happening
wise.
task wise, everything, the efficiency, whatever. We have like, admin reports, task reports that are followed. We have SOPs. We have, all that junk has been built out.
I will say most of our systems, just for
Yeah,
everyone to listen to, are on the cloud base.
everything cloud. Yeah.
We don't have anything
Okay.
really. I mean, some admin maybe take notes, but on a piece of paper, but nothing's on pen and paper. Everything's for everybody to.
That way it
Uh,
can be shared across
hmm
wherever, even remotely.
So it's that way, and then so we had the manager there, and then we just hired a salesperson. So we'll always have a sales. There's a sales side. There's three legs for us: a sales, management of all the administrative type junk, and then the teachers. So we can, and then there's systems for each one of those, and then we sort of oversee that now, and so that's kind of the way it's set up for us, and I think that's something that will scale much easier because we're going to have it, like you said, the videos for every single thing that they have to do. If we lose somebody, we can train the next person pretty quickly. If they're not behaving and doing their job, or they have to leave for whatever reason, it doesn't cause us. I mean, it used to be Chris and Hannah will come in and do all the work, and we've been doing that for so long. We'd have on and off whether we had to. Okay, this person's leaving. So we've learned. I would say something that we've taken a lot of damage on over the years is administration and learning the hard way on a lot of that. So I would recommend people what we're doing. Um,
At a bigger scale.
at a bigger scale, and even honestly
At a
small scale.
small.
You want someone to run your billing, or it's you might have to go through 20, 30 interviews or even more, but find you can find people in the Philippines that actually uh, just sound like somebody from the US with an accent, and if you look hard enough, and then you could find somebody, they could do your sales for you, if they're because a lot of their jobs over there is sales, and they have to do like straight cold calling. Like those the Filipinos, sometimes they're calling like 300 people a day and cold calls, and so we're warm. All of our leads are warm for the most part. I don't know if maybe there's some people doing cold calling, but not in music school so much. It's warm leads. It's
Yeah.
much easier for them, and so they're used to the worst.
Do you have an issue at all with the language barrier or
Mm-mm.
accents
You
or
got
anything
to
like that?
hire you. That's where you hire. So when we do the interviews, we don't even start an interview. Everybody has to send in a video of themselves introducing themselves. We'll listen to the video. First couple minutes, whether that's somebody that can. That's what I'm saying. So we really kind of hone in for that first.
It also depends on what kind of, if you were just a solo person and you needed someone,
Yeah, a little bit of help.
just needed a little bit of help on. There's people who over there. I mean, it's sort of the same thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be just Filipinos. It could be any sort of like, if you want to try to get an Upwork or what is the other one? Fiverr.
Five or whatever. But
That
yeah,
that sort of thing. You could try that. If you have just like, hey, I need this project to be done, or I need some marketing, and you don't know where to go on that, you can get some help. And it is cheaper than going to like a full blown marketing company or
Right.
you
Like
know
an
at
agency.
at the beginning.
yeah. And we're also constantly looking for ways to, well, not constantly, I should say. I want to start constantly looking for ways to use artificial intelligence to help us do what we do, and stay on the edge with that as well. Because I think nowadays, even for like people to call in and maybe off hours or something, you train an AI. It doesn't even take that long to understand everything about your business. It can comb through all your files. It can look at your website. It can do all that junk. You tell it what we're like in your own words. You ask it to ask you these questions so that it knows what to do in the phone call. And you answer all those questions, and now it knows. And now you've got to train, and you set it upon your customers and the off hours in which you can't work. You could even do that. It's not even that expensive, and you could do that as like a solopreneur or whatever, and that gives you more leverage without even hardly any money. But if you want to spend a little bit more, you can train like a Filipino or something, and get something there. Of course, you get someone in the States as well, but those are options you should not ignore.
Mhm. Okay, so looking at the future, you started to touch on it a little bit. Where you guys are headed? What's next for Chris and Hannah in this journey you're on?
Well, as you
What are you
guys,
guys?
oh, sorry, as you probably know, the probably for me, I'm an Alex Hormozy person, so the
Uh-huh.
constraint of this business, all that stuff, I think we're going to get figured out. SOPs, get the machine going, fine. That's easy to see. The constraint of a music school business is the teachers, is to have a teacher that is a sticky teacher that will teach in the right manner, or at least have a certain level to them, where the kids are learning to read. It's not something funky or at scale. So as you scale, you have less and less people in the region to choose from. We've kind of, so my thought is, I don't, this is something we're going to see if we can find a way to build. We're going to have to switch from contractors to W 2 payment, but we're going to try to find a way to create a training regimen for the teachers, different levels that they can reach so they move forward. So you have better teacher retention, which helps your student retention. Like our business pulls in 100 trial lessons a month. Last month we had 190. It's the most busiest month, and then it's going to tail off to like more about 100 every month. But we're dumping 60, 70, something like that a month. We're losing. So it's more about fixing that retention side, as you know, David. And so to fix that, we got to get our admin better too. Yes, but I think really the side that's going to matter the most is going to be the teachers. And I would love to have like an onstage certified teacher, right? Like someone comes in, they know it's at least this ground level, and sell the business more like it's not I'm coming to have a lesson with Susie, but I'm coming on stage to have a lesson. Like you take your car
Right.
in to get fixed, and you're not taking it to Johnny. You're taking it to the this such and such whatever company, and everybody has this certain level, and
Right.
you don't have to worry about it.
You're selling the brand.
Brand. I want a more brand. Yes, I mean it's the typical thing as you get bigger as a company, you want more brand, and that's what I want to start to turn into more. So that's kind of what we're thinking.
Interesting. So really we come back full circle, right? So growing when you first bought the business, it was all about finding the right teachers, right? To go from just Chris and Hannah to Chris and Hannah plus, teacher A, teacher B, that kind of thing. And now you guys are at this stage where in order to really scale, you need to find a way to create. And one of the things that we did right before I sold was we started working a lot on the community element of
Mm-hmm.
the teachers because you're right, sticky teachers are it's the most valuable part of your business, frankly. Having a teacher that lasts for more than 2 to 3 years. Um, the other thing, and I don't know if you guys have done this, the other thing that we did was we created a teacher leadership team
Mm-hmm.
where we invited certain, like not many, it was usually between 5 and 10% of the total teacher uh, body to join this leadership team. And it was just an honorary position, it wasn't a paid position, it was honorary. Like, hey, you guys are our eyes and ears. We trust you. We want to hear from you. Thoughts, what's going on in the school? What can we do better as a company? But also those teachers were like ambassadors for the brand and for the company. Because again, you're totally right. It's all about creating community and building sticky teachers. Uh, and so, how do you do that? And I think one of the ways you do that is through community, is through making it so that people have a reason to stay beyond their paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, no, I think that's very interesting, and that whole topic, very broad topic, but that is a very, I think, a good question to find the answer to. Like, how do you create
I
more
think it
community in
is
your
the
school?
single most important thing in all our music schools that we have to solve as a community, because it is a part-time. I mean, it's part-time. I mean, it's just part. That's the nature of the job. You can't get but so
Right.
many hours, and so because of that, the person, especially if we're smaller, the teacher may only have 2, 3 days max. And so, if they needed more income or whatever their other little thing is that was going on is not supporting the other half of their income enough, they're going to go get that full time job. And then guess what? You're gone. And that's typically how we lose people, just because, if this was your full income, you're going to think a lot more about leaving it, so it's going to be, you're going to stay a lot more just because of that reason. Plus, you're only even if you got a great teacher, enrichment program, and you have leaders and all that good stuff, you're still only having to choose from a certain amount of teachers in the area that are interested in it. So if I want to grow, I need a source, and so I need to find almost a teacher marketing side of things, where I can get a better teacher source to choose from. Because even if we go W-2, teachers are gonna when there's a scarce resource like teachers, because that's scarce, they have more power. So if they want to act up or break their contract or whatever else, this person has 30 students. And let's say you're only a 100 student school. That is, I mean, that's a problem, and that's a third of your income almost. Just gone if this person quits. So you end up bending over backwards. Oh yes, please, so and so, please, whatever else. You start changing rules, and then that starts affecting your business. And that's a very real thing on the way up. And even right now, even at this size, I don't want to. Someone has 45 students or whatever. Like, I don't have somebody just plug in. I don't, or maybe I do, but even at that, I'm going to drop some kids, and so that gives them the teachers have a lot more strength because of that. In a way, they have more. So I'm looking to have something where I have more leverage, essentially, if and inspire the teachers to want to stay and move up levels or something. Just this is this is only in the thought world right now because we're still focusing on this transfer with the admin. But once that's over with,
Right.
then we're going to turn our focus to what I just mentioned. It has to go in that order because the place has got to run first. You know what I mean? You got to get the place to run, then you can focus on these other things. But I think that's what unlocks a lot of things for everybody. All these music school businesses. I mean, you talk to any music school, most all of them have that same problem. If they could have like a consistent teacher that's solid, and you had a nice source of that, you couldn't. I mean, you could put schools all over the place as long as you had that other stuff built.
Chris and Hannah, you guys are amazing. And I love what you're doing. I love your spirit and your hearts towards the people that work for you. I've always admired the way you guys run your business. Thank you for being on the broadcast today. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you for having us.